Okay, my friends, today we're going to go back and we're going to cover quite a span of time, but largely around the turn of the century, and based on this article from the early 70s, from Muscular Development from Mr. Sig Klein. Now, Sig, in fact, it starts out with something that he did with Kettlebell that we'll see. And we did cover, there he is. He's still in basically a one-arm kettlebell overhead press. And that's a 100-pound kettlebell. There's a description on the picture, but it's illegible. But there it is. In 1944, one-arm overhead press with 100 pounds times 5 with each hand, which these days, when you got the big giant guys, doesn't seem super impressive. But back then, Sig Klein, and he was probably weighed about 170 pounds when he did that. Now, we did cover previously a video called Unusual Exercises, and these are a couple of them. So there'll be some of those in the video, but it's more based around actual feats of strength. And again, and there you see Marv Eater doing some body weight stuff. And there's, I think that it might be Bruce White because he was a grip specialist doing gripping the rafter and pulling himself up. And these are some of the unusual exercises that we covered in that last video. Holding a broom out like that and holding a chair up like that. A lot of the stuff from Sig's thing was stemmed from people's occupations. Here he talks about the brick trick. You lay out 4 bricks, you put under them. So you're lifting 4 bricks just with your fingers, and that's what this describes. And then it talks about even putting more bricks on top to make it harder. So obviously, that would be something Masons might do. This picture illustrates some of the occupation-based things, or just unusual feats. One of which was the bent press, which was a big thing back in the day. You don't see people doing that too much these days. But he goes into the sledgehammer stunt here, which of course, and he's describing, this is something that guys that work with sledgehammers, like guys who worked in quarries and stuff, would do. And then it became more and more of, and there's Slim, the hammer man, who we covered before. And, he did work in a quarry, as shown in that first clip there, the first picture. And I did get to meet Slim, which was really cool. But he took this whole sledgehammer thing to a whole nother level. You see, he's got a blade there. So if he messes up, it could have very serious consequences, as you can imagine. But you can see he had very serious arm strength and was strong all over. Now we talk about the sugar barrel rock, which is, based on another occupation. He's talking about this gentleman that did this thing with the sugar barrel where he would grab it, kind of straddle it, grab it front and back with his hands, swing it back and forth till he finally was able to stand it up in front of him. So that's a pretty neat trick. And, the barrel weighs over 200 pounds. A lot of stuff done with barrels back in the day. And there's Herman Garner and this lift with between the barrels and the people. That's like 1,000 pounds he's got on his shoulder. And there's Bruce White with barrels and easy stuff. Looks like he's doing, he's got this set up for kind of a yoke farmer's walk deal. And there's Bob Peoples using barrels to do squats. And he did a lot of junkyard stuff and stuff like that, just like Bob Zuver did. And again, back to occupations, we talk about the ice cold lift where he's describing this, one of his pupils, Sig is, this guy Joe Mangelli, who was an ice man, which back in the day, they had ice boxes when they didn't have electricity. So it was pretty crazy. He's, describes him carrying around like over 500 pounds of ice, and there he is. He's got 300 and something on his back, and then he's got carrying tongs with more in each hand. And that's a pretty massive load there. And it says he would carry that load for over a city block. Then we go into the potato swing, which is a teeth lifting feat that Sig describes. Somebody he knew challenging him to it where he would swing this 100-pound bag of potatoes back and forth till he got it over his shoulder. Sig says he was able to duplicate that. Now, teeth lifting was a big thing back in those days, and I believe this is George Eiferman here lifting one of his friends, and there's Hugh Cassidy. They're having a teeth tug of war. So that's Hugh Cassidy, and there's Hugh actually lifting up. I don't know if it's the same guy, but somebody obviously with straps, and so it's a lot of neck power, obviously jaw power, and kind of a popular thing back in those days. Then we go into Poker Player's Revenge, which, if you can imagine, it's tearing cards in half. And again, that was something that Sid and here's Manager's Master Strongman, where he's tearing cards in half with oven mitts on. So that's pretty crazy. Then he talks about the Saxon caper. The Saxons were like circus performers back in the day, the Saxon brothers. And this guy came into his gym, said he was Herman Saxon. Turns out he wasn't. But he did a pretty impressive bent press, which the Saxon brothers were famous. Talks about. Did a bent press with one arm, switched over to the other, and then held it on his head for a while. Feats of strength go back to Samson and Hercules. Here's Hercules, and he's defeating a lion, much like Samson did. And of course, Hercules was kind of an inspiration for strongman from all time. And then we go into bodyweight stuff. He talks about this guy doing push-ups, and he said he could do 500 push-ups. Like in a row. And not only did he do 500, he did 550, as Sig describes. Now here you see more body weight stuff, and there's Marv again doing holding two guys on him while he's doing dips, which is pretty crazy. There we go back. Then that's, I think, Mr. White again with the grip pull-ups on the rafters. And here's an old gentleman doing a one-arm push-up, which is pretty impressive for anybody, let alone this guy looks like might be in his 70s or 80s, and he's doing a one-arm chin-up. So that's pretty impressive. So those are all feats of strength when it comes to body weight stuff. Then we have the hard way to earn $10, which describes a French block weight. And that's a whole other grip area where you're grabbing the top of the block to lift up the weight, and he describes doing that. Joe bites his nails. Who's he talking about here? He's talking about, of course, the mighty Adam. And there he is. And he would bend nails, and spikes and stuff like that. Pulled airplanes with his hair, did all kinds of crazy stuff. And he wasn't a big guy. He only weighed like 150 or 60 pounds. And there he is with John Grimmick, and they're describing the Adams show that he did. He actually did a show in my area, ringing the kettlebell, where he's talking about his father having picked up a 110-pound kettlebell with just his finger. And then it describes this challenge that he mentioned that to a guy at his gym, and the guy came in and was able to lift, not only duplicate his father's lift, but actually lift it overhead with one finger. And kettlebells have been used for a lot of different things. Here you see Steve Reeves doing sort of like a crucifix hold with some heavy kettlebell. Reeves did some strongman stuff too. Here you see him holding up 4 ladies. And we got here's again a one finger lift, which was another trick. And Gorner did a lot of that too, where he did one-handed deadlifts and deadlifts with just a couple fingers and even one finger. Doing it the hard way here. He's talking to John Davis, who was a famous heavyweight lifting champion, and he actually picks up 2 100-pound dumbbells, one in each hand, and one with a thick handle, walks them around a corner and up like 3 flights of stairs before setting them down on the dumbbell rack. The Jersey Bounce. Here he's talking about John Grimmick in his early days, and it was all the way back to 1930. And yeah, Grimmick was around back in those days, and then he was from Perth Amboy, New Jersey. But it talks about him going to his gym, picking up a 185-pound barbell, just lifting it up overhead, put it back, and then not just doing squats, but actually jumping up on each squat. And you can see in that bottom corner picture, it looks like he might be doing something like that. The super squat, he's talking about Milo Steinborn, who was a big proponent of squatting and really squats in the at the turn of the century, like 100 years ago. But it talks about him picking up a 188-pound solid barbell, swinging it to his chest, and then doing a one-legged squat with it, which was pretty impressive. And then we go into just kind of weird and funny stuff. This guy's doing, got quite a bit of weight there, you can see, and strapping his, doing some neck work there, but that looks pretty dangerous. And then you have guys doing stuff with just unusual weights, and that's like the biggest dumbbell I think that's ever been created. And then we go to guys like Louis Cyr, and a lot of times were used as opponents, you might say. There he is with horses pulling against him. There's Herman Gorner again, and you see him there with a baby elephant that I think he actually was able to lift up, which is pretty crazy. Gorner did some crazy stuff, and here you see him with a very large young boy and holding him with one hand, and it looks like he's not just holding him, but maybe lifting him up. And people lifting other people is a very common thing, and some of these pics that I'm going to show here are from my Muscle Beach video that I did a while back, and they did a lot of cool stuff at Muscle Beach. Here's a guy with a young kid, and he's held up by his head, which I can't imagine that's too comfortable. But and here's Maxick going back to the day, lifting somebody with just one hand, and there's a couple pictures of him doing that. Maxick was another strong man. He did a lot of muscle control kind of stuff. And there's a Maxick sitting at the piano and holding somebody up with one hand, which, as you can imagine, is pretty difficult. But, kind of fun, cool stuff. Here's Chuck Irons, who was holding a young lady out on his forearm, which is pretty impressive, obviously. Chuck was a big dude. He was about 300 pounds. And then we go back into the occupation thing, and this is what you call a stevedore, which these are the guys that loaded boats back in the day. And here you see somebody carrying like a 100-pound sack of whatever, which Carl Norberg, that's how he developed his strength. He was a stevedore, and he was known for carrying a couple of those sacks at a time. But he was able in his 70s to bench press like 400 pounds. Of course, we all know about Popeye with the crazy forearms. How did he get those? Pulling in ships with his, forearm strength, I suppose. Then we talking about great bodybuilders that also were strongmen. We have Chuck Sipes. And Chuck Sipes was also a lumberjack, which is obviously something that requires a good deal of strength and stamina and all of that kind of stuff. And then we talk about the guys doing platform lifts, lifting cars, lifting huge weights on their backs. Stout Jackson was a guy that did a tremendous lift on his back. Reg Park, not really known too much for doing strongman stuff, but he did some here and there. He is lifting a car, which is, again, pretty impressive. And those cars back in those days were heavy. This is Mac Batchelor, who we may have to do a video on. He was a pretty famous strongman back in the day. And then we have guys doing stone lifts. This is an Indian stone lift. And this is pretty massive stone. They would use these round stones, the Indian strongmen and wrestlers. And, of course, there's the Denny stones, seen being lifted here. So that's, odd object stones, that kind of thing. Warren Lincoln Travis was another strongman back in the day that was known for just lifting unusual things. Here he's seen with an old-style barbell and a cannon, and there's like the biggest dumbbell that's probably ever been, and he's doing a hip lift with that. So Yeah, and the hip lifts were pretty popular back in the day. Back to Sig. Here he is setting up to do the unassisted foot press, which I believe this next gentleman, I think that's Hal Holbrook. And that's a pretty impressive amount of weight there, and just freestyle to get under, set up and get under that weight. And he's got heels on, and, you know, he's doing this like a leg press with just the weights. So, I mean, we could go on really forever with all these kind of things, but this is probably already the longest video I've ever done. So we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the new subscribers. If you guys have any requests, let me know. But I'm out.